Welcome to the 31st class of Haiti, the most important country in the world. You might notice class number 30 is missing. That's about the relationship between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And I want to treat that lesson a little more carefully before I make it public because it's a pretty heated topic. But what I'm going to be talking about today is Francois Duvalier, aka Papa Doc. I just gotta say, there are not a lot of good videos on YouTube about Francois Duvalier, at least in English. Most of them are just like the voodoo president, Mr. Voodoo, voodoo man. And certainly his appropriation and misuse of voodoo is a very important aspect of his leadership. But it's way overblown. So I feel actually a lot of responsibility to do a good job with this. Your introduction to Papa Doc, Francois Duvalier. So, as always, this is a class where I suggest you take notes. Active learning is best learning. I am not a specialist in Haiti. I am not. So, if you are interested in this, please know this is just an introduction. Students and friends, I am Professor Sky. My name is perhaps known to you. I've undertaken to teach about Haiti. I want curiosity and a thirst for complex understanding to reign in this class. I am working to help that happen. Unite yourself, students, and learn with me for the same cause. Also, I've been getting over a sickness, so if I sound bad, that's why. So today's class is simply called Papa Doc, about the complex and mostly terrible legacy of Francois Duvalier. First question is, what do these two people have in common? Right? What do Tom Brady and Papa Doc have in common? Some people said, well, they had a lot of time at the top and they were completely tyrannical, but that's not it. There's a more specific reason. Stay tuned to find out that answer. This is my favorite image to sort of describe Duvalierism, and I'll translate this for you. This is a placard. It's a piece of propaganda from the Duvalier reign. To wish to destroy Duvalier is to wish to destroy Haiti. That is as much as he was trying to equate his personhood with the country itself. Leading up to Duvalier, this is the famous Wikipedia page with all the presidents of Haiti, and you see there's too many presidents, certainly right up before Duvalier took office. Look at that. 50 to 56, 56 to 57, 57 to 57, 57 to 57, 57 to 57. All right, there's a lot of chaos going on here. So this is the time in which the Duvalier father and son took over. And you see from October 1957 until February 1986, a smooth reign of, well, smooth, an uninterrupted reign of the Duvalier family, which makes this one of the saddest stories in Haitian history. That their most successful, longest lasting leaders were also some of their most destructive to the people. But what I want to do is I want to really just drive into this concept of Papa Doc as I've been doing in this class in general. There are heroic aspects of Duvalier. Now, that might sound horrific, right? I mean, how can you say? But listen, I want to find the bad things about heroes and the good things about villains. That's the complexity of life. And Duvalier, as you will see, if he had never entered politics, I think he could have gone down as like one of the great Haitians of all time. One of the greatest, most inspiring Haitians of all time. But as we will see, he does get into politics. I like to think of it like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde because he was a doctor, right? So the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is you have a doctor who experiments and he creates this liquid which turns him into the evil Mr. Hyde. I think we have sort of those different sides of Papa Doc. I think the doctor is the good side of him, and maybe the Papa side is the more evil side. I saw somewhere, I forget where it was. Please tell me in the comments if you're a Haitian expert and you know where I lifted this from. But someone described him as like trying to incarnate two different kinds of loi in Haitian Vodou. On the positive side, you have the cooler, the Rada Loa, who are more associated with Africa, and on the other side, you have the hotter, more temperamental Loa associated with with Haiti. So I don't know. I'm not going to insist on that too much, but that's an interesting way to think of it. Oh my God. That is the worst slide I've ever seen. One second. I have to animate this slide because that was just absolutely terrible looking, wasn't it? Oh my gosh. All right, here we go. Time to share the slide again. All right, good. So, he was born middle class and black. At this point in Haiti, the division between those who are what we call in Haitian history colored, which is to say mixed race, are primarily in power. They are the minority, but they are primarily in power. But he was born middle class and black. He was short, thin, nearsighted, and ambitious. He was shy and soft-spoken. This is part of the magic and the amazingness of Duvalier. When you think of tyrants, you often think dictators, you often think of big hulking people who are trying to impose themselves all the time. He was a very shy, soft-spoken man who sometimes would just sit in silence when people were talking to him. At age 8, he will watch the Marines invade his country. So you should watch my videos on the invasion, on the American invasion and occupation. We will see that did FDR write the Haitian Constitution? This is actually up for debate. He probably didn't, but he did claim, Franklin Delano Roosevelt did claim to write the Constitution. But there is something that the American occupation gave to Papa Doc. Papa Doc's tyrannical rule could not have existed without the groundwork laid by the American government and the American Marines. So, what did this occupation give to him? Well, the most important thing was it centralized the nation. If you remember, before American occupation, Haiti was like 11 different spaces with different regional powers. America centralized everything because that's the easiest way to control people is through excessive centralization. So they helped to weaken the other powers that might confront and defeat Duvalier and his people. They unified the country with a common external enemy as well. Because America was the external enemy, it allowed them to feel this need to protect themselves and that they need a big, powerful, strong person to protect them, a dictator. And in a way, he adopted some of the theories of negritude, which again is the philosophical, poetic, literary philosophy that things of African, that the literature and culture of people of African descent all across the world share certain qualities and need to be uh, shown a lot of importance and respect, because in most of the world, they are not. But the thing about Duvalier is he was very adept at taking things that were good and turning them bad. So I wouldn't even say negritude. I would say he was using noirism, blackism, a kind of black supremacy, which he just used and turned into a form of black nationalism. Black nationalism is a very complicated term. Please don't go to me for a definition of black nationalism or anyone named Ian. You're really going to want to look up different definitions, but he had a form of black nationalism, which is to say, a form of nationalism where blackness and Haitianness were linked, and there was a primacy given to the black citizens of Haiti. Okay? So these two different sides, like these two different sides, in a way, he would use the fact that people of African descent have a culture that is distinct and worthy of appreciation. But then also, black nationalism can be used to bring him more power and distance himself from the coloreds, who had most of the power at that point. It served a great function. There's the good and the bad side of it. As far as education goes, he was super educated. He became a doctor. They call him Papa Doc. His son is called Baby Doc. He's not a doctor, but Papa Doc is. He became a doctor and like he starts curing this disease I'd never heard of before, yaws, a chronic bacterial infection that affects the skin, bone, and cartilage. Thousands a week. So think about this. Think about the brilliance of Duvalier. He is out in the country with the peasants, the workers, the people, and he is curing thousands of them a week. And he is taking care of them, and he is meeting them, and he is shaking their hands. And you think that somebody who cures your kid of a disease is not going to be somebody that you vote for, is not going to be someone that you look up to? His power base was really strong. Okay. It's really strong because he actually did the work. Again, if he never went into politics, he would just be this heroic figure who fought diseases in Haiti using his excellent education and working really hard for black rights. Like that's who he would be if he never went into politics. Then he goes to Michigan and he studies. Did you figure it out? Tom Brady also went to the University of Michigan. That's the similarity there. Okay, go Wolverines. So he goes to Michigan, he studies, goes back to Haiti, and helps to cure malaria in the country. What an amazing figure who does so much. And at this time, he starts to take on this personality of Papa Doc because he's not just a doctor, he's like a father. He's like all kinds of authority figures wrapped into one. So, all the way throughout this time, there's a ton of unrest, as you remember from Too Many Presidents. Haitian unrest. What does it give to Duvalier? Well, it gives him a warning lesson. He starts to see things that presidents should not do. One of his former teachers, Estime, shows the value and ability to use blackness to one's advantage. Then he also sees Magloire, who is a different president who is supported by the colored elites. So he saw the ways that one could be something of a puppet, so he knew how to look to avoid that. But most importantly, he saw that there was opportunity in democracy. Democracy was ripe for abuse, was the best way to rise to power. So many things that we've been studying in this class have been military coup after military coup. Duvalier understands that the answer is democracy, deformed, despotic democracy. So, what does democracy give to Duvalier? Well, he gets elected in 57, so he wins an election. As far as we can tell, fair and square. I mean, he's a heroic doctor who saved thousands of lives of people in the country. He's helped to start a newspaper to spread negritude in Haiti. He's an intellectual. He's a doctor. He helps people. He's a family man. What more could you possibly want? This guy's great. He's reelected in 1961. All right, so maybe his name is the only name in the ballot, but that's not the most corrupt. He puts out a referendum to see if he should be president for life, and it said yes on the ballot already. If you said no, you would get arrested. Isn't it interesting to see how in just 7 short years he goes from democratic to completely dictatorial? This image right here, I think, shows you a lot of what Haiti was like during his time. A giant painting of him. As it says, Duvalier's democracy was not democracy. It was Duvalier, Duvalierism. Duvalierism. I prefer to say it in French. Right here in the photo, you can see the whole thing. Or what about this photo? I asked my students, how does this describe everything? You know, is this person running after Duvalier to tell him about how much he's suffering? Or is he running after him to tell him thank you that he's such a great leader? We don't know. But this distance between himself and his people, his cold look, his detached stare, it's everything. But what is Duvalierism? Well, it is a kleptocracy, which means a democracy that is run on stealing things. He stole constantly. Now, he didn't steal as much as his kid. That'll be the next class. But he stole constantly as president of Haiti. He stole foreign aid, he stole from the people, he stole whatever he could. He had a kind of perfection of brutality that was semi linked to randomness. Like it seemed like his desire and his ability to torture, kill, imprison his enemies was unending, but also seemed random. Like it wasn't always clear why he did things. Sometimes he just did them on suspicion. And that's the best way to keep people scared. So it said throughout his reign, over 60,000 people were killed. Who knows if that number is accurate? It could be higher, could be lower, but it's in the tens of thousands, that is for sure. This created a sense of fear and devotion in him from the people. They both loved him and they were afraid of him. And if anyone was against him, they would tend to get disappeared. This would help to create a cult of personality, a term developed by Stalin, but taught to me by the rock band Living Color. Cult of personality. I can't sing, I can barely even talk. He was paranoid, the people were paranoid, everybody was paranoid everywhere. It was a paranoid state where everyone was afraid of being thrown into jail. Everyone, and he was afraid of being assassinated and being attacked at all times. The blacks were used and exploited at all costs all the time. Their power, their numbers. Voodoo was also used and exploited. And again, when you look up Duvalier on the internet, it just keeps on saying the voodoo president. And it's just, one second. Politics and religion go together all the time. And it makes sense because every single holy war has always been about power and it's never been about religion. Always. Faith justifies the ambition to dominate. That's just historical truth. There's never been a holy war about anything other than land and power. And if you think otherwise, then you're being fooled by somebody. So it's no different with Vodou. It doesn't matter that Duvalier was smart enough to recognize Vodou, something which earlier leaders should have done. Vodou should be appreciated, respected, given the same seriousness as any other religion. But he was able to take its marginalized status and use his support of it to make himself bigger and bigger. And he exploited it the same way. Listen, every single American president who's ever been elected is a Christian. How many of them believe in God? Tell me. Is it 50%? Is it more than 50%? You ever see Trump being asked what's his favorite book of the Bible? Oh, I just love them all. Can you pick one? It's so personal. I love the Bible, like so much. Anyways, so the fact that a politician uses and abuses religion to maintain power over the people should not be treated as something special just because the religion itself has been marginalized. But in particular, he called himself Le Baron Samedi, which if you watch my Vodou lesson, you'll learn this is the most famous law, the law of the cemetery, and he intentionally dressed himself to try to evoke that. So what did Vodou actually give Duvalier? I use the term voodoo and Vodou. I should change that. I should change that because come on, it's Vodou. It's not the same thing. I mean, voodoo is like everyone knows what you're talking about, but come on, let's go, Sky. Let's be more accurate with our work here. So what did vo I misspelled it again, it's fine. What did vo what did Vodou give Duvalier? Well, it was an Afrocentric religion, which helped him to further exploit blackness and use it as a political tool. It was a tool to manipulate people, just like any other politician uses religion. But it also had the particular ability to have this social structure, what's called a combit, which is a collection of people sort of structured around family and usually some family practice of Vodou. And he was able to infiltrate those spaces and help to convert them to Duvalierism. It was a way to integrate himself and ingratiate himself with the people because they have a faith that has been forbidden by the presidents in the past, by everybody. Everybody looks down on them for what they believe. He was at least smart enough to say, whatever you believe, not only is it fine, but it's good. So this helped to create a political base and an ability to create self mythology that he was Baron Samedi. that he was stealing corpses, that he was stealing babies. He probably wasn't doing these things, but he wasn't upset with that myth. Even though that myth seems like a bad one, he liked it because it gave in to the sense that he was larger than life and that he was everywhere. He wanted to be a religious figure. Even his voice and his appearance, the way that he would talk, how strange he would be, it might have been just the way he was, or it might have been an affect to try to imitate something more mystical and spiritual. This is one of my this is my favorite picture. This is my favorite picture of the Duvalier family. You see Papa Doc holding onto the gun. You see Baby Doc right there, far to the left. Sweet little kid, looks like a sweet little kid. He's not, but looks like a sweet little kid. The military, he got support from them in the election. But over time, it was clear that they just supported him because the other guy was worse. Duvalier understood they were the enemy. Of course they were the enemy. Who's going to take out the president? It's always going to be a military coup. They have been, since the revolution, since 1804, the most stable source of power in the country. So he is their enemy. I mean, there was like a failed coup. Oh, I'll talk about that. I don't want to overwhelm you with coups. Let me give you an example because there were so many coups against him, so many attempts to take him out. Give you a little example here. A group called Jeunes Haiti. In 1964, they tried to start a revolution. Now they're expats. They're from outside the country. They're from Haiti, but they came back. They're based in New York, but people go to Harvard, NYU. The Marines boasted the most hard-fought guerrilla campaign Haiti had seen since the days of Perrault. This coup had a lot of success, but it didn't succeed. And Papa Doc was so upset that in the town of Jérémie, because he thought one of the people who was doing the coup, his family might have been in Jérémie, so he just killed 20 people randomly. And there was a couple people left over who he caught, and he had a firing squad on TV. He punished coups as hard as he possibly could, publicly, with public executions, with torture, as much as he possibly could. So they were the clear enemy. So he disbanded them, and he replaced them with the Tonton Macoute. Now, Tonton Macoute. Anytime you have a dictator who uses democracy and then abandons it and uses paramilitary forces. Paramilitary means military-like. It's not the same thing as the military. It's paramilitary. My wife, in the other room, she's from Serbia, and the most war crimes were committed by paramilitary officers who were working in favor of Milosevic, in favor of the president of Serbia, but they were just like guys. They weren't trained. They didn't have ethics. They didn't have a code. So anytime you have masked paramilitary forces that are primarily responding to the president and not to the people, you know that your country is in deep, deep trouble. Okay? You are on thin ice as a country. All right? You are on very thin ice if you have masked and disguised people who are acting as a paramilitary force to terrorize the people and answer only to the president and not to the people. So that's what Duvalier was doing with the Tonton Macoute. Are we the baddies? Is it possible we're the bad guys with this skull on here? The Tonton Macoute, the name itself is terrible. Tonton means uncle, and this boogeyman, this old folk tale of someone who throws children into a bag. Uncle Children in Bag. That's what the Tonton Macoutes were named after. They're a transformation of an earlier named group called Cagouillard. Cagoule is like a whole face mask, like a whole stocking mask. And they were the personal guard of Duvalier, and most of them were criminals. Most of them were just angry, violent people, because that's who he wanted to support him. He didn't want people with a code. He wanted people who would be supported. And they were unchecked power. They wore dark glasses. They wore hats. They were paid with money, but they also were paid in power. They could steal, they could take what they wanted, they could kill, they could abuse. They had unchecked power because they were acting on behalf of Duvalier. And as long as they supported Duvalier, they had the support. And of course, they were supported by the Marines. Of course, they were trained by the Marines. Do you understand that it never stops, Americans? Do you understand that it never stops? That the CIA never stops? That the reason that the rest of the world does not trust America is because we never stop doing this stuff? We never stop training people in other countries how to better oppress their people. We just don't stop doing that because we think it's in our interest. So, of course, this group of killers were supported and trained by the same Marines who occupied the country just a few decades earlier. This image shows it all. Okay, the Tonton Macoute in the back and this little kid in the front. Their slogan was this: we don't kill people, only enemies. The dehumanization involved in this is very clear. And when we talk about the tens of thousands of people who were killed in Duvalier's reign, many of them came at the hands of the Tonton Macoute. So the government gave Duvalier money and training for anti-communism. I need to explain this to my students a little more clearly. It's hard now because communism has lost the Cold War, right? But there was a belief after World War II that communism, centralized governments with the means of production owned by the state, not by private companies, anti-free market systems known as communism were going to take over the world. So America did whatever they could to fight it, whether it is starting the crack epidemic in Los Angeles, or whether it was giving guns and weapons to literally anybody who said they were anti-communist. The Duvalier were not stupid. They just kept on telling America, hey, we hate communists. Can you give us some money? If you don't give us money, we might like communists. So that's how they were. That's all you needed. You could do basically anything you needed to do. And as long as you said you'd fight against them. So they got $50 million a year for the Tonton Macoute. And what did Duvalier give the government? He basically just blackmailed the US government for a few years. He gave stability for American companies to work. Now, the people are suffering, the people are dying, the people are poorer than they ever were before, the people are sad, the people are scared, the people are paranoid, but the businesses are relatively stable. And no communism. He wasn't interested in communism, but he could always hold that as a threat. Kennedy apparently was interested in removing aid from Haiti. And there's a story about Duvalier using a voodoo doll on Kennedy. I don't think it's true. I think they just made it up. But he did take credit for Kennedy being shot. But he was somebody who was filled with excess of cruelty. He became increasingly paranoid as time went on. He disbanded the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts. I guess that was a different kind of paramilitary group. He forced people to have a month of gratitude where they just celebrated and partied in his honor. After Trujillo, the dictator who ruled Dominican Republic, in the Lost episode 30, you'll learn all about him. He had an alliance with this dictator who had fairly recently killed a bunch of Haitians in a massacre, but they had an alliance to basically protect each other because they were both dictators. But Trujillo was assassinated, so he got more paranoid, and there was more coup attempts, and he became fragile, and he just knew that that was history. So you see, I have a little image there of black dogs because he was convinced that one of his enemies turned into a black dog, and so he had all the black dogs in Haiti killed. Whole puppies, okay? That's the kind of guy that we're talking about here. One of the most interesting things he did was he changed the Haitian flag, or he changed it back. This new flag is a version of flag that had been used before. Sometimes it has the L'Union fait la force in the middle. Sometimes it doesn't. I prefer just to see it like this. Now, these are the colors of Dessalines and Christophe, two other great dictatorial leaders who had a who are famous in Haiti, but it's also the color of this secret society called the Bizongo, which were a secret society kind of connected to Vodou, but like really just something that existed and that he was able to manipulate. And the Bizongo loved Duvalier because Duvalier apparently supported Vodou and was very pro-black. And so within security, so they helped to foster this devotion. And what he did was he obviously replaced the blue and the black. But this is my favorite thing about this flag, or the most interesting thing. Think about where the flagpole is. The flagpole is attached to the black, meaning the red, which represents the colors, is on the outside. The old flag was split horizontally so that the red and the blue each get equal representation on the flag, on the pole. But he also said, I am the Haitian flag. I mean, he said, I am Haiti, I am the Haitian flag. At every single time he possibly could, he equated himself to Haiti. A little bit like Toussaint and several other leaders, he had sort of a, if it's possible, a bad guy, somebody who worked alongside him, his tall sidekick, this ruthless Duvalier. Barbeau, who worked for Duvalier. He helped to disappear his enemies. He fought back the Cuban invasion, which wasn't even really happening. He also ended up becoming a scapegoat until he eventually became known as a rebel enemy, until eventually he became a real enemy and there was a rebellion. A fairly understandable and familiar pattern that keeps going. His family was very important to him. He had a wife who was colored, who was mixed race. He had children. He had in-laws. But also, he told his family that they had to marry mixed race people as well. They had to marry mulattoes, like he did, which goes back to the same sad fact of this sense of white supremacy and the belief of a lighter skin leads to more power and more opportunity and more money. But he exiled his daughter and his son-in-law. He exiled family members a lot. He was constantly afraid, constantly at war with them. But he did have an heir, which there he is, little baby Doc. The Haitian soccer team is going to be playing a game in about an hour. I'm looking forward to it. They're playing against Costa Rica. Hopefully, they make it to the World Cup. But I just want to tell you one little story about Duvalier, which I think illustrates something. Listen, everybody, I'm a French professor, so that means I support France in the World Cup. I know they're a good team, but that's who I support. But this right here is one of my favorite players of all time, and he plays for the American team. America does not do well at the World Cup, but there's one team that we almost always beat, and that's England. Yes, England, the country that invented association football. We beat them in 1950, 1-0. It is one of the greatest moments in the history of American sports. And who scored our goal? Joe Gaijan, who, of course, was from Haiti, studied in New York, said he was going to become a citizen, so he was able to play for our team. So, what does that mean? In the world's game, one of the greatest goal scorers in the history of the American team comes from Haiti. There he is celebrating. His family fled because they were not Duvalierists. They all left, but he said, I should be safe. I'm a national hero. Everybody cheered me when I came home. Everybody knows my name. 1964, some Tonton Macoute said, please step over here. And he went to what is called Fort Dimanche, the prison where Duvalier disappeared people. Nobody ever heard from one of Haiti's greatest sports heroes ever again. He was probably killed right then, or maybe he was kept alive and tortured, who knows what, but he never returned from Fort Dimanche. How a country doctor can go from helping to cure diseases for the people to incarcerating and killing his enemies so fast that we don't even have numbers. He was a president, and this comes from Laurent Dubois' book. Do I have it here? No. The Aftershocks of History. He called himself the president, but he didn't. He called himself the supreme chief of the Haitian nation, uncontestable leader of the revolution, apostle of national unity, renovator of the fatherland, worthy heir of the founders of Haitian nation, incorruptible leader of the great majority of the Haitian people, and spiritual father of the nation. That's what he called himself. How did he treat the press? They had to say things like this. Duvalier is the professor of energy. Like Napoleon Bonaparte, Duvalier is the electrifier of souls, a powerful multiplier of energy. Duvalier is one of the greatest leaders in contemporary times because the renovator of the Haitian fatherland synthesizes all there is of courage, bravery, genius, diplomacy, patriotism, and the tact in the titans of ancient and modern times. As far as the church goes, he even had the Lord's Prayer rewritten. Our Doc, who art in the national palace for life, hallowed be thy name. By present and future generations. Thy will be done at Port-au-Prince and in the provinces. Give us this day our new Haiti, and never forgive the trespasses of the anti-patriots who spit every day on our country. Let them succumb to temptation and under the weight of their venom. Deliver them not from evil. Not a very good prayer. He would release these books, these writings, where he would describe who he is in these spiritual ways. And if you've been following this class, I hope you find this fascinating. Who are Dessalines, Toussaint, Christophe, Pétion, Estimé? Dessalines, Toussaint, Christophe, Pétion, Estimé are the five founders of the Haitian nation who are found within Francois Duvalier. Do you see how he takes a lot of the philosophical beliefs, the spiritual beliefs, like the Loa, the spirits who like absorb the spirits of other people? Is Dessalines for life? Yes, Dessalines is for life in Francois Duvalier. The questions and answers were repeated for each of the four remaining founders and ended, do we conclude that there are six presidents for life? No. Dessalines, Toussaint, Christophe, Pétion, Estimé are five distinct chiefs of state, but who only form one and the same president in Francois Duvalier. Ladies and gentlemen, he is rewriting the Trinity. He's creating a sex entity. I don't know. I don't know what a six version Trinity is, but that he is all the leaders in one. And his legacy is sad. There was one doctor for every 10,000 Haitians. Life expectancy was less than 33 years. The average per capita income had dropped $75 to $65 a year, and the literacy rate had been before the revolution of 1804. Tourism, a major source of income during the Laguerre years in the 50s, was non-existent due to the savagery of Papa Doc's regime and the threat of war with the Dominican Republic. Hurricanes Flora and Cleo and Inez, each of which claimed scores of lives, wiped out crops and increased soil erosion. As if these problems were not enough, Duvalier's paranoia, coupled with a desperate economic situation, had forced the educated few to leave the country. For example, there were more Haitian doctors in Canada than there were in Haiti. So that is the complex figure of Francois Duvalier. I hope you find that interesting. I hope that this is better than the rest of the stuff that I found that just tries to simplify it as being the voodoo president. I mean, is Trump the Christian president? No, but he uses Christianity. He makes his own Bibles. He tries to create a cult of personality, right? Okay. So, anyways, next class will be on his son, Baby Doc. First time as tragedy, second time as farce, but it's all tragic. All right. Until next time, there's the camera.